Um, I just want to introduce Chantel real quick. Chantel Guertin is the best-selling author of 7 novels, Stuck in Downward Dog, Love Struck, the Pippa Green series, which is for young adults, and her most recent release in June, INSTAMOM. She's the beauty expert on Canada's #1 daytime talk show, The Marilyn Denis Show, as well as the founder and coordinator of the Lifestyle Media Postgraduate Program at Centennial College in Toronto. I'm happy to welcome Chantel Guertin to Video Book Club. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. This is exciting. I'm happy to be a part.
So we're going to start off with a few questions. Tell us about a little bit about yourself and how you got started writing.
So I think this is probably an answer that lots of authors have, but I always wanted to be a writer. So I remember as a teen, like in the backyard in the summer, just like writing, thinking I was going to be able to write a book that was going to be published at the end of that summer. And that was not the case. But I kept writing and went to journalism school and worked at magazines, because people tell you that if you love to write novels that you should be a journalist. Those are 2 different careers, because one, you get to make everything up, and the other, you get fired if you make everything up. So I really learned the hard way when I was so shy and couldn't do an interview with people. I kept thinking, like, how am I going to make it through doing this? But I found a niche being like a beauty editor and writing about skincare and healthcare and things like that I liked. But every night I would go home. Even when I was working at ELLE, I had a great job. People would go out at night. I would go home and I wasn't allowed to eat dinner until I had written for an hour. Because I thought this is it. I want to write a novel, and I just have to. Right now, it can only be a hobby. So that's a great way to look at it. I think if you have to love what you're doing, right? You can't just think about the end result, because that end result may never happen. And over the years, I had a great book ready to go, and my publisher went out of business, and so that book never came out. So you have to keep thinking, like, I wrote this because I wanted to write. So that's sort of been my path.
And it is so different, I think, when people talk about when you write for magazines, because your word count is a lot shorter too, right? I mean, you're not doing, the thousands are hugely different, right? Of word count and stuff, right? So
yeah, definitely. I'm always looking at the word count being like, no, so I have 2,500 words. That's not going to be a novel yet,
Yes.
Tell more story.
So what does a typical writing day look like for you?
So it used to be a lot different, because I was single and I lived by myself and I could stay up all night writing, and I still prefer to write at night. It's like I got through the day and like things inspired me and I could feel creative, and nothing's happening at night. I love the quiet. But now I am a stepmom of 2 and I have a son of my own, and we have a dog and a cat, and that is like, I have to go to bed. So I'm exhausted by the time 9 o'clock rolls around. So I have to get up. So reluctantly, I am part of the 5 a.m. Writers Club, and I really try to get it done. And when I do in the morning before everything starts, I feel so great about the day. And then it's almost like that stuff that I wrote kind of percolates. And then I try to make notes if I think of something great. So the next morning when I wake up and I'm so tired, I'm excited to write that scene.
So for the readers that don't know, tell us about the premise of INSTAMOM.
Sure. So INSTAMOM is the story of Kit Kitting, and she is child-free by choice. So she has never had that urge to become a mom, and there's many reasons for that, which you sort of learn in the book. And so she has built her entire career around this. So it started with, she wrote an article about being child-free by choice, and that spun into a book. So she has a book that's called Kid Free Forever. She goes on speaking tours around the country. She started these meetup groups for women who, lots of women out there want to talk about things other than children. Even if they have children, they want to still have that friendship that they had with their friends when they were younger. So in your 30s, when everybody's having kids and the only time you can talk to your friends is like Saturday afternoon for 2 minutes at 2 o'clock because their kids are napping. She was like, I'm going to find these women, put them together. They can talk about their careers and their hobbies, and no one has to talk about children because they're all child free by choice. So this is her life. And she goes to an influencer event because she's also an Instagram influencer, which is a happens to lots of people through their jobs. And she meets this sexy chef and she falls for him immediately and then learns that he's a single dad. So in a word, it's a deal breaker for her, except now she has feelings for him.
What inspired you to write Insta Mom?
There's a couple of things. So the Instagram side of things, coming from it as a beauty editor, where, I would interview a dermatologist and like find out its good ingredients so that you would have like a, good product that looked, helped your skin with blemishes. I started going to events for these where you learn about products coming out, and there started to be a shift away from just like the traditional journalist there, where I went to this one event. The whole thing was purple and black and white in theme. That's fine. There's people walking around taking pictures. Again, they're trying to tell the brand, oh, we got all of these people out to your event. And I was standing there having a drink, waiting for these like acrobats to do this whole Cirque du Soleil thing to tell us about the contact lenses that we were supposed to learn about, which like in itself, you're just like, what is happening right now with trapezes? And you're just like, shouldn't we just like try the contacts and see if our eyes get dry? But all to say that at one point, I noticed that a lot of people were wearing purple and black, and I was just wearing like a blue dress. And I was like, that's interesting. Like, did someone tell them on their invite that they are supposed to be dressed in the same colors? And then this photographer was taking pictures and he sort of motioned to me, and I was like, oh, okay, just like wants to take my picture because I'm at the event, like no big deal. So I was kind of like positioning myself and like smiling, and he kept like motioning to me and I kept moving. And then I realized he was moving me out of the pictures he was trying to take. And that's when I was like, oh, like I am not an influencer, and he is hired by an influencer to take her picture. She had balloons. She was like walking around, like getting the great shots because that's her job. I was like mortified because I just was like, oh my God, what is even happening right now? Like, I just need to go home. But then I was like, later, a couple days, I was like, that is going to work itself into a book at some point. So when I was coming up with this idea, I wanted to talk about someone who was child-free by choice because I thought that was an interesting thing. For a long time, I didn't think I was going to have children. I was actually married to a man who we had decided together we weren't going to have children. And then one day I sort of was like, oh, like, what if like I regret this decision, which is such a cliche, but there were a lot of things wrong with that marriage. And I thought, I was already in my late 30s. I thought there's probably a chance I'll just never have kids anyways. But what I realized is like, I also in that was like, but if I did, I wouldn't want to do that with that man. And so he was lovely, but we were not a good partnership. So all this to say, I eventually ended up meeting someone. He was a single dad. So it wasn't a traditional dating for me because I just had to think like, whoa, do I also want to be involved with like, if this works out, then I have to be involved in some way because I don't think you could just be like on the sidelines of someone parenting their children while you live in that same house. And regardless, you're going to have to like learn how to cook fish sticks for these kids because they don't like the steak you're about to eat, right? So I put all this together and I thought it'd be great if this character was really like, I don't want to have children, but she's falling in love. And then the Instagram part put her in the spotlight. So it wasn't just a personal decision for her. It was like, this is the career she's built. People come to her, they look up to her, and she championed for them for so long. And so now she's got these people who are like, so you're just going to betray us? You're just going to like go to the other side now? And I thought, how would a character deal with all of those pressures for life and how she feels?
That's great. You have Kit Kidding on one hand and you have Pippa Green on the other hand, right? So between the series for the young adults, do you have a preference between writing for young adults or writing for, I'm not going to say adults, but you know what I'm saying, more women's fiction than writing like the Pippa Green series? Do you have a preference?
I think they both play a role. What I really loved and why I wrote the teen series was because I had this idea for a character, but the story I wanted to tell for her. So hers is sort of that she meets this guy. She's volunteering at the hospital. She doesn't want to do volunteer work at the hospital. Like everybody else got these like cool volunteer jobs for their their senior years, high school. And then she meets this guy who she had her crush on for a long time, but there's another guy and it's complicated. And if you write that as an adult novel, then already you're like into cheating, right? And I didn't want to write about that. So, but as a teen novel, you're like, well, you could like kiss a boy and then kiss another boy. And so I just thought, oh, this makes a good teen novel. So sometimes I think it's the story you're trying to tell. And I love reading YA, and I love the voice that can come out in that contemporary romance. But it's still, I love a rom-com. So that series is also a rom-com as well. But it's really nice to write for adults. It's really nice to feel like I could talk about this with my friends, with other women my age, and have conversations about what we're reading and those kinds of things that for the time that I was writing the teen series, that was probably about like 7 years, I was kind of out of that world of being able to contribute to adult fiction from the writer standpoint. Of course, still as a reader, I talk about it with my own book club, but so that's been really nice.
So before we move into the rapid fire questions, tell readers how they can stay in touch with you.
Sure. The best way is on Instagram if you're on there, because I've sort of chosen that as the, easiest platform to sort of stay in touch with that. But I have a newsletter that when I finished writing this next book, I'm going to actually send out a newsletter in a couple weeks or so. So if you go to chantelguertin.com, then you can sign up for it there. And that's pretty much the best way.
Okay, and so now we're going to move into rapid fire. So what's your favorite trope to read and to write?
Oh, I love the enemies to lovers. So I just love the banter and the like wittiness and the, when they're not loving each other, but then they will.
What sort of trope do you never want to read again?
I don't love the like, oh, he's secretly a prince or like a rich guy or something like that. But I can always be proven wrong, probably. But I just don't really gravitate towards that one, probably because I'm like, I don't know why. Actually, it's a good question.
Are you a pantser or a plotter?
Oh, plotter.
Who is your first book boyfriend or book girlfriend?
Oh my gosh, I read this book. It was a YA book when I was a teenager, and it was called Not Your Type. I have been trying to find this book since I've told this to another book club, and she has to go to this summer town because she was not being very good, and her mom sent her to stay with her grandmother and her aunt as punishment. But in this town, she falls in love with this bad guy who's like 3 years older, and then her aunt and her grandmother are like, "Oh my God, what are we going to do with you?" I mean, I think he wore a leather jacket, and this is what was so bad about him. If you can find this book and you like, this sounds good to you, this book was so good. I read it so many times that I've already actually called my dad to ask him if he can find it in my childhood bedroom. So there you go.
It's probably hidden between the mattresses somewhere.
Yeah.
What is your favorite writing fuel?
Oh, well, I would say wine, but the next day that it never seems as funny as I thought it was when I was writing it. So
with whom would you want to be stuck in an elevator?
Oh my gosh. Roger Federer. He's a tennis player. Like, I love him. I think he's very happily married and has like a million children, but pretend he didn't, then.
Which character in INSTAMOM would you want to be friends with?
I would want to be friends with, that's a great question. I have never considered, actually. I think that I would want to be friends with Will, but just like friends with him, because Sometimes I feel like he can be a bit jerky, but he obviously is a really good chef. So that would be fun because you get invited over to dinner parties and that would be fun.
Lots of good food.
Yeah.
If you could be any of your characters from any of your books, who would you be?
Oh, I think I would be Kit. I mean, I think I really identify with her, and I just like that she really wanted to, despite everything, of course, still wanted to fall in love. And I liked this sort of realistic to life. It's not always easy to fall in love, but you can choose how you want to approach falling in love, right? So I think that's it. Like falling in love is a choice, and to be like swept away by some of the aspects, even though some of the stuff is kind of like ho hum, day to day, gotta wash some dishes.
That's great. What book world, either yours or another author's, would you want to step into?
Oh, you know who I really admire is Emily Giffin for really fleshing out the entire town that she sets her books in and like all of the characters that are in it. I also think Leanne Moriarty does a very good job, and Taylor Jenkins Reid as well, where you feel like it's like, this feels like it actually is happening. So I just feel like being a part of those like would be really fun.
What's the best advice you've ever received?
Oh, it's that writing is a muscle. And if you don't practice it, then it doesn't get stronger. And I try to tell myself that, because if I ever take a few days off, it's just like, I'm like, oh my gosh, well, that's it. Like I'm a terrible writer. I don't know what happened. And so that's it. I just won't ever write a book again. And then I just tell myself, it's just like anything else, right? Like running or playing tennis. And I feel the same way if I try to do those things. And so it's really inspiring when I can actually remember that. And somebody gave me that advice.
If you couldn't be a writer, and I know you're also a lifestyle expert, what would you do? Like if you took those away, if you took both of those away, let's say.
I'll tell you. So I'm at the cottage right now, and I made a friend, which is funny to me. Like, oh, I'm 45. I made a friend, but she just totally changed her career. She was a real estate agent, and then she decided she didn't love it, and she now makes like floral arrangements, and she just got this like super retro truck that she's like painting mint green, and it's going to have all her flowers in the back and drive around. And I'm like, you're basically a character in a novel, and you're going to become one, right? But I'm like, she has a son the same age as me, and I'm like, our lives are so different, because she lives up here in the cottage land and I live in Toronto, so it's a big city, and like I just love it. I just like, oh, this is who I want to be when I grow up. But she's like 10 years younger than me, so that's actually also funny.
So did you write a playlist, or if you were going to write a playlist, what songs would you put on the INSTAMOM playlist?
Oh gosh, I can't even answer this. You know what? I did start a playlist, and then one day my husband found it while he was making dinner, and he was like, "Oh, we're listening to the INSTAMOM playlist." I was like, I think there's like 4 songs on that, and one of them is the opening to Big Little Lies. You know that long intro? That song is actually like 9 minutes long, and so like I don't even know why is that even on there. It has nothing to do with it. So I'm sorry. I'm actually terrible at this song question.
So no playlist for you.
No playlist.
Well, how do you celebrate a new release?
Normally I have I like to have a big book launch where I invite all my friends and my parents and everything. And that didn't happen this year because we are pretty behind here in COVID land. I don't even know where you all are. I know you're in a different time zone, but are you all in the same city?
No, we have people from anywhere from Texas to Arkansas to California to Florida.
Oh, okay.
So across the Midwest also. I think I'm leaving out a couple of the cities, but lots in the Midwest as well, like Chicago, and a few other places in there. So
I love that. Well,
so
so I mean, I want to move to Florida because my parents have a place there, and they were like, oh, we just kept living like the whole time. Like we just golfed every day. And I was like, oh my God, like we're still wearing masks everywhere. And so all that to say, I couldn't have a launch or anything. Like that day I went grocery shopping. So this is actually very exciting for me. So I guess this book is a long stretch of sort of finding the little nuggets of fun things.
Can you tease your next book or not yet?
Yes. I think I can. Okay, we're struggling with the name, so I don't know what the name is going to be, but it should be out next summer. But the premise is that this woman owns a bookstore, but she listens to audiobooks, which kind of goes against the bookstore because you would not make any money off this. But she just likes it when she's cleaning up the store at night and, mopping the floor. She hears a voice and it is like love at first listen for her. She thinks like, oh my gosh, like I just love the sound of his voice. And after she listens to a few more of his audiobooks, he's read a series, she does a deep dive, she discovers that that's not even his real job. He's a tour guide on a bus that goes across England for 10 days. And so she's one night at her store, she has a little romance readers book club, and she's with her girlfriends. They're talking about this. Oh, we never take a chance. Saturday night, we're always here reading rom-coms together, talking about them. No one ever takes a chance on finding true love. So she tells them that she found this voice, and they're like, you have to go. And she's already looked it up. There's a trip that leaves in a week. She books it. She goes. That's all I'm going to say. Things don't exactly go as planned.
Yeah, that sounds really great too. There's a lot of really sexy voices for the men's narrators.
Yeah.
I mean, my goodness. So yes, that's a great premise. So we asked our readers before you came on, we always ask what you're watching, reading, and listening to. And of course, in honor of you being here today, how are you Insta famous, in your own little Insta world, but we know how you are, but maybe talk to us a little bit about what you're watching, reading, and listening to right now.
Sure. Okay. So I am watching Bridgerton. I actually went to England to research the book, and I did a Bridgerton tour because a lot of it is filmed in Bath. So that was like really fun. And I'd only started to watch it. So that made me be like, oh, as the tour was like, guide was saying, she was like, you haven't seen the whole thing and you're here on the tour. And I was like, I can't time these things. But that made me really want to watch it. So, doing that, and reading is actually kind of funny. My stepdaughter, I wouldn't say she's like the biggest reader, but my husband and I are both writers, so we really try to encourage the kids to read. She read Maze Runner. It's not my kind of book, but she was like, oh my gosh, this book is so good. Like she was like so into it that she was like, you have to read it. So then I was like, so I'm reading it now because I want to be able to like not be like, well, you know what? Good for you that you're into reading now, but that's not my kind of book. And also, if this is a best-selling book, of course, I'm sure it's great. So I'm halfway through that. Okay, what am I listening to? You know what I listen to all the time? The Happier podcast with Gretchen Rubin. I just love it. Like I just feel like when feel like my life is going off the rails, she's like, all you have to do is just this one thing. And then I'm like, right, this is simple. We're just trying to be happier, right? Like find a little thing. So that's like my guilt. No one likes when I listen to this in the car. So I often just have to go for a walk, or else if I drive by myself, then that's like my guilty pleasure. Like, oh, they're always like, oh God, the Happier podcast. Like not like I'm listening to like somewhere people being murdered here. Like
most of our listeners. Oh no. They do the murder podcast. But I was gonna say, isn't she the author of The Happy Project?
Yes.
Or something like that. Because I think I read that. It was really good. Yeah.
Yeah. And her podcast is so great. Like every week she talks about like these little tips you can do just to make yourself happier in different ways of your life.
Well, thank you so much. We are gonna stop record and then open to reader Q.